Here's how I reset my brain to be wealthy in my 20s. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought to yourself, how does everyone seem to have it figured out except for me? I used to do the same thing, scroll all day on Instagram, YouTube, and see everyone talking about 10K a month, 100K a month, college dropout to millionaire. But I didn't understand how anybody was doing this. And I felt like I was stuck in this vicious consumption cycle, that I was actually programming my brain to feel like a failure because I didn't have those things. I realized that I needed to have this look in the mirror moment with myself where I was radically honest. I realized that the relationship problems, the health problems, the wealth problems were all because of me. I was a magnet for these negative things in my life. To share with you are the top 3 tools I use to brainwash myself to become successful in my 20s. The first thing I did was I stopped moving towards pleasure and instead I started moving away from pain. If you had the chance to go to Hawaii, but you had to pay and raise $50,000 to go on this trip, would you do it? If I asked you to generate $50,000 in the next 30 days to save your loved one from dying, well, now you'd start thinking differently. Do I need to sell my car? Do I need to create a GoFundMe? Do I need to go get a second job? And even though that's a little bit of a harsh way to think about it, this is actually how I've reprogrammed my brain for success. So when I was $25,000 in debt, instead of thinking, how can I move into my dream apartment in New York City, I realized that the more that I had this debt that I had weighing over my shoulders, the more I would have had to sleep in my childhood bedroom, get ready in the morning, the same place I'd been living for so many years, not feel confident when I go into work. And I was a financial advisor, so I was meant to be giving people financial advice, but I couldn't even get my finances under control myself. And this is the sad reality that most people are living in the matrix and living with this imposter syndrome and this fear and this worry. So I want you to think to yourself, how can you take one tangible step to move away from pain today? Which brings me into step number 2, is I did a 12-month detox. So I remember it was January 1st of 2020. And I cut out all of the toxic relationships in my life. Romantic partners, friendships, coworkers, anything from the past that was still lingering on. Because I really understood that I was a magnet for everything that I was attracting into my life. And the one book that really helped me do this was this book called Calling in the One. And to summarize it for you, it just gives you these daily self-love practices. And one of my favorite practices in that book was actually writing a letter to all my past relationships and closing the book, throwing out any gifts from past partners, past friendships, writing this closure letter, and then ripping it up and burning it. Alongside, I also wrote down some of my limiting beliefs and my fears and my worries. And after I did that, I committed to one small daily practice that everyone can do right now. I wrote 3 sentences of gratitude every single morning. And when I wrote those 3 sentences of gratitude, I instantly reminded myself of all of the inner work that I had been doing and how important it was for me to stay in this mindset of gratitude and abundance every single day. Then, my health. So what it started with was intermittent fasting for 30 days. And the reason why I did this was to get myself on a cycle of eating less because I was overeating and I was binge eating my emotions away. After the 30 days, I got into the habit of eating less and only eating in a specific time window. It also became the catalyst for me to do daily walks and take daily home workouts in the middle of my workday because I was working a corporate job at the time. And then step number 3 was my wealth. So I hit all of these buckets: health, wealth, and relationships. And in the wealth bucket, I began reading this book by Ramit Sethi called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. That taught me how to just get a really basic understanding of personal finance. And some little switches I made was switching my savings account to a high yield savings account and actually saving while I was paying off my debt rather than just putting all of my money to my debt. I then created a simple 6-month financial plan of how I could become debt-free. And because I had a plan of action, I knew exactly what I needed to do, and all I needed to do was follow that plan every single day. And step number 3, and the most important one, is I played the opposite game. Everything that most people were doing, I did the polar opposite. So for example, most people in their 20s go out and party. They binge drink. They look forward to the weekends. So while everyone else was out and partying, I was reading personal development books. I was watching motivational YouTube videos. I was learning how to grow my skills. I invested in a drop drop shipping course after I became debt free. I was watching videos about how to invest into real estate. I actually started creating my own reality by acquiring new high income skills. I stopped watching the news and I started replacing that with podcasts and high vibrational music. And the number one thing that I learned while acquiring these new skills was that the best way to scale with $0 was to actually grow my personal brand and scale with media through content creation. So I began making videos on TikTok and Instagram, and then people started asking me to coach them. And it was really interesting because I was pretty transparent and I said, hey, I've never done coaching before, but I'm willing to try this out. And then I got some testimonials and some feedback, and that's how I built my coaching business. And then I got to a point where I was pretty capped out with online coaching, so then I built my first online course. And the most important thing for you to remember is that when you start taking one step today, you can actually start stacking your skills and going down a positive rabbit hole instead of a negative one. And if you want to learn exactly how you can do this in the next 90 days, I want you to click the first link in the description because I'm going to teach you exactly how you can monetize as a content creator. I've created this entirely free course just for you, and